Good morning, folks. Kenny and the Goose here. We're going to take a moment to break from our normal routine, but we'll be back shortly with all your favorite hits. Today's weather announcement is brought to you by JTGND's very own Matt Starks.
Turning up the radio, I peered over at the time before glancing down at the speedometer. 11:06. With a huff, I gripped the steering wheel and tried to focus on anything but the fact that I was running late.
I hope you've all gotten your donuts and coffee bright and early on this Saturday morning because it's going to be a real doozy today. The chance for freezing rain has risen since yesterday, and we are now en route for a severe storm around noon. With a high of 28 and a low near 13, we expect that much of this rain will freeze over within the next few hours. Updates will be announced every hour on the dot. Stay safe and stay warm.
Frustrated at the news, I switched over the radio and swung into the grocery store parking lot. If I was late to this birthday party, I was going to look like nothing more than a deadbeat dad. Freezing rain was the least of my worries. My ex-wife's wrath was much worse. Her words echoed in my head as I slammed the door to my old Chevy pickup and marched into the store.
Jeremy, I swear to you right now, if you get Bren's hopes up one more time and—
Listen, it was an accident last time. You know I got caught up with work. My voice cracked, and my hands shook as I gripped the phone. It took everything I had to not toss it when I heard her sigh of disapproval over the line. I never wanted to be that dad. My own father had failed me, and the last thing I ever wanted to do was disappoint Ren in the same way.
Just be on time.
Bianca's voice was stern and short.
Please.
When I finally stepped into the store, I was thankful for its warmth. The usual chatter of customers lining up to purchase last-minute groceries could be heard only a few feet away. Dread burrowed deep within me when I noticed how long the lines were, though. Everyone was packed in like sardines, all of them trying to grab the essentials before the storm. Eggs, milk, and bread. Maybe if I slipped one of those people a 20 and expressed my reasoning for needing to rush ahead, someone would cut me some slack. I raced down the toy aisle, searching high and low for the gift I knew my son had his eye on for the last couple of months. Ever since he was little, he had a fascination with building model cars. Neither Bianca or I knew where he got it from, especially considering that I was no handyman. But sometimes I would sit down at the table with him and help. I knew I hadn't been the best father for the last few months, but I was hoping that he and I could sit down and work on this one together. I knew a model car wouldn't fix our strained relationship, but a part of me was hoping it would help mend it a little. A sigh of relief left my lips when I saw the box staring up at me from the top shelf. I snatched it up, shoving it under my arm, and booked it to the checkout line. I fumbled around in my coat pocket for my wallet, quickly flipped it open, and yanked out a crisp $20 bill before approaching an older woman near the front of the line. "Ma'am?" I started. "Is there any way you could allow me to—" Windows shattered, glass littering the front of the store. Shuffling back, people began to panic. Rain was coming down in sheets, and the air that blew in was so cold that it just about took my breath away. At first, none of us noticed anything besides the rain. Not until the screaming started anyways. The first victim was a woman who appeared to be in her mid-30s. All of our heads snapped in unison towards the horrible screeching sound. Her body being dragged out by some strange creature. Its hands were firmly wrapped around her hair, and she kicked and screamed and flailed before it turned and threw up some strange substance on her. A strange, inky liquid plastered itself to her face, successfully silencing the woman. I staggered backwards, watching in horror as more of these creatures began to filter into the store. All of them were slicked with rain, their pale white skin glistening with droplets. Monstrously large wings protruded from their backs. In some ways, they almost appeared human-like. As more customers were dragged off, I took that as my chance to bolt towards the back of the store to hide. With quick strides, I propelled myself forward as fast as I could, heart racing in my chest and my legs burning. I focused on trying to think quickly on my feet. The flutter of wings echoed all around me as I located a promising spot. Yanking open the men's bathroom door, I slid into a stall and hunkered down. Despite being so cold, sweat beaded at my brow. Whatever those things were, they probably wouldn't be gone anytime soon. I could hear the chaos from outside the bathroom, and the last thing I wanted to do was find out what those things were. Glancing up at the ceiling tiles, I noticed a vent. I quickly stood up onto the toilet seat and tugged it open. A pounding on the bathroom door caused me to pause only a moment before I lifted myself up into the vent and closed it. Just in time for the bathroom door to bust off of its hinges. Laying flat, I tried to steady my breathing. The first stall door flew open as the creature kicked it with an inhuman amount of strength. Stall number 2 rattled as its door crashed open, the creature inspecting it before moving over to the next. My heart raced, and my palms were sweaty as I clenched my eyes shut and hoped that I would be spared. I flinched, cursing under my breath, my startled reaction causing the creature to stop dead in its tracks. It was barely audible, but just loud enough to catch its attention. Pointed ears perked up at the sound as its black, glossy eyes investigated the stall before snapping up towards the vent. Terror filled me for a split second before I heard a familiar tune. My phone buzzed on the floor a couple of stalls down. The creature stalked over to it and then stopped. But what it did next surprised me the most. "Bianca?" It asked, its voice imitating that of a man. It was nowhere close to what I sounded like, but it was probably believable enough. I could hear her voice over the speaker. She was livid. She most definitely wasn't paying attention to the fact that I didn't sound like myself.
Jeremy, I told you you can't keep doing this.
She shrieked.
It's 12:30. We've already cut the cake and Ren is refusing to open presents until you get here. If you don't show up within the next 10 minutes, he is going to be crushed and we are going to go no contact.
A dark chuckle escaped the creature's lips as it stared up at the vent. Fear coursed through me as I fought to understand what this thing had in mind.
Jeremy!
Bianca screeched.
What part of this is hilarious to you?
Bianca. It interrupted. I'm right down the street. Don't you worry. Anger simmered within me. Not Bianca, not Ren, anyone but them. With a click, the creature ended the call and stalked back over to the vent. It ripped it open with ease, and I yelled in protest as it dragged me out. Kicking and punching, I finally made contact with the weak spot and it relented for a moment. I took that chance to hop down from the vent and darted towards the bathroom door, but I was quickly dragged back by the creature. A thick, Black substance oozed from its nose as it pinned me to the ground and bared its sharpened teeth at me. Fear coursed through my system tenfold. The last thing I remember before I passed out was the sound of sirens. When I finally awoke, everything was blurry. Warmth bloomed from my hand, and I was surprised when I looked down and saw someone else's hand folded within my own. "Bianca?" I questioned, my voice hoarse and scratchy. "Where am..."
"You're in the hospital,"
she said, cutting me off. Tears welled up in her eyes as she rubbed her thumb over the back of my hand. Curiosity bubbled within me at the gesture. She hadn't been this kind or gentle since before the divorce about a year ago. The heart monitor spiked when my memories came flooding back. The grocery store, the creatures. "Bianca," I mumbled, panic beginning to settle in. "What about the..." She interrupted me, soothing back the hair that was matted to my forehead.
"Jeremy, you need to calm down. Everything is okay. You were just in a really bad accident."
I shook my head, pleading with her to turn on the news. Confusion knitted her brows together. "Please, Bianca, please. The grocery store." I was having a hard time stringing the words together. For some reason, my head was pounding. The heart monitor began screeching as the memories came flooding back. Bianca stood over me, her face contorted into a worried expression.
"You're just struggling with some brain fog. I'm going to go get a doctor,"
she exclaimed before running out the door. Rain pattered on the window across from my hospital bed in a slow drizzle before I noticed something strange. Bianca mentioned brain fog, but now I was certain that she was wrong. My eyes darted to the door, and I instantly paled when I noticed my son with a man that looked very familiar. Ren instantly ran to my side and crawled up on the bed with me, but my eyes were trained on the man who stood just outside the door beside my ex-wife. She was talking to a nurse, but he was staring straight at me. A grin curling at his lips with a wicked gleam in his eye as he possessively wrapped an arm around her waist. "Ren?" I whispered. "Who is that man?" His big brown eyes peered towards the man before looking up at me curiously.
"Oh, that's just Mommy's new boyfriend."
Leaving Bianca's side, I watched as the man stalked into my room. He was a hulking behemoth of a man. In fact, he was so tall that he had to duck just so his head didn't hit the door frame. Thick, dark hair was slicked back from the rain. His black boots squeaking on the linoleum flooring. The second his eyes met mine, the realization began to slowly settle in. He ripped a card from his coat pocket and then handed it to me, a knowing look crossing his features. With shaking hands, I flipped it open and instantly paled. Plastered across the card was a torn page from the Bible. Genesis 6:4 glared up at me as my eyes scanned over the words. And that's when my mind began to spiral.
The Nephilim were on Earth in those days, and also afterwards. When the sons of God went into the daughters of humans, who bore children to them.
The thing is, they came with the rain, just before the flood. But they never really left.